Aloha, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sarah Slater Snyder, and I'm here with you today sharing a little bit about how to set and hold emotional boundaries this holiday season. And I want to talk to you about, I'm really excited and passionate about this actually, this topic in particular. So, a little bit about me. I am a licensed therapist, I'm a registered yoga teacher, I'm an elite embodiment coach, and I live here in Hawaii. And the work that I do with my clients, generally speaking, involves boundary setting. So much of what I do and teach women, girls and women, I should say, is about boundary setting. And with the holidays coming up, it just seemed like, gosh, what can I share? What can I teach that would help others to really be able to be fully present and connected and grateful for their loved ones without all the holiday drama, right? Without all of the unhealthy family dynamics. And if you're here watching this with me today, I imagine that you yourself have experienced some type of unhealthy dynamic, whether that be with a family member, with a partner, with a friend, right? And so I'm here to answer your questions and to share a little bit about what I know to be true, what I've learned, some skills around healthy boundary setting. So we're going to be talking about several things, several pieces of this, right? The first piece is learning how to stop over apologizing for taking up space in this world, right? Learning how to start reclaiming our space, our self, emotionally, physically, mentally, right? And then we'll talk too about how to really elevate our confidence through healthy boundary setting so that we can find our voice, we can speak our truth, even with family members that are codependent. We're going to spend a lot of time talking a little bit about codependence today, just so that you understand what that is, what that looks like, whether or not you are codependent, and how to break free from those cycles. And the last piece is really like how to step into your power within those relationships, right? How to embody your highest self. And that's what I teach women, how to come home to your highest and wisest self. That's what elite embodiment is all about. And we're going to do that through setting and holding these unapologetic boundaries with your loved ones, right? So the first piece of this is I really want to help you to understand whether or not you need healthier boundaries. If you're here watching this with me, you may know that already, but it's important to understand, like, what does it mean to have a codependent relationship, right? What does codependence look like? What is the antidote to codependence? We're going to talk about that today, right? Because I want you to be able to release this illusion of control that codependency creates sometimes, so that we can stop worrying about other people's needs and feelings and behaviors and start worrying and tuning, not really worrying, but tuning into our own emotional experience, right? The goal is to stop worrying about others and really just be present with and tune into ourselves so that we can put our own needs first without the guilt, without the shame, right? And that's really what we're here to learn about today. So I am going to share about how to release that guilt and shame and how to protect your precious emotional space, so that you can really live more freely and joyfully in the present moment so that you can improve the quality of your relationships, right? So that you can enjoy the holiday season without any of that drama. So let's jump right into it. So what I teach my clients is I integrate neuroscience, psychology, and yoga. Everything that I know to be true is backed by science. And my embodied paradise method that I work with my clients involves several pieces, right? We're going to be focusing on the second pillar of my embodied paradise method, but I'll just briefly share with you. The first pillar is really this idea of learning how to create like safety within your own body, learning nervous system regulation through my experiential somatic soothing tools so that you can create a sense of safety, you can self-soothe, because it's not until we're out of survival mode that we can actually start to use like higher level thinking and functioning to be able to reframe our limiting beliefs. If we're stuck in a feeling of a lack of safety, we cannot really reframe our limiting beliefs, right? So that's why the first piece of my methodology, which I'm not really addressing as much today, but that's all about creating safety in the body. That's all about creating your own personal paradise. That's kind of my brand, right? And the second piece, though, of what we're going to focus on today is really this idea that, you know, as we want to set healthy boundaries, we have to have a healthy mindset. And so in order to do that, the second pillar of my embodied paradise method is what's called conscious reframing. And conscious reframing is this idea that first, we're a yes to ourselves. We have this awakened commitment to be a yes to ourselves, to release society's expectations of us, to release our family's expectations of us, right? And stop apologizing for whatever that dynamic that's already there and created, right? Instead, we're going to step into a place of fearless courage. We are going to learn how to sort of move through and reframe our fear-based limiting patterns, and ideally so that we can then release those codependent patterns that are there, right? And then we want to embrace this empowered conviction to speak our truth, to step into your power through radical self-love practices, some of which I'll teach you today, that allow you to assertively speak up for yourself and to set healthier boundaries. So let's jump right in. I want to start with this. This is a little quiz that I created. I'm going to ask you some questions. Those of you who are here with me live, I would love for you to keep track of this. So I'm going to ask you, there's 10 true or false questions. This is a quiz basically to determine, do you need healthier boundaries? Okay, so keep track as you say true or false to each one. How many true, how many false? Okay, so the first one is, I give more weight to others' feelings than to my own. True or false? Do you give more weight to others' feelings than to your own? Is that a true statement or is that a false statement? Okay, the second one is, I frequently say yes when other people ask me for help. Do you frequently say yes when other people ask you for help? Are you a yes person? Okay, so keep track of this. Number 3, I often feel responsible for other people's emotions and or reactions. I can't tell you how common this one is. True or false for you? Number 4, I have a hard time expressing my needs to others. Number 5, I struggle with being alone. Number 6, I tend to be a fixer, peacemaker, or people pleaser in my relationships. Also, if any of this is resonating, you guys, like throw in a little hand raise, throw in a comment, let me know what's resonating. All right, let's keep going here. Just a few more. Number 7, I sometimes wonder why my relationships feel so one-sided. Is that you? Do you find yourself in these one-sided relationships? Number 8, I am more of a giver than a receiver. Also, by the way, I used to, for me personally, all of these were true at one point in my life, which is why I'm so passionate about teaching this. Number 9, I struggle to make difficult decisions. Is that you? Number 10, last one, when a relationship becomes overwhelming or confusing, it's difficult for me to remove myself from it. True or false? Okay, so tally it up. I want to know how many true and how many false. And I'm going to tell you, if you found yourself saying true to 3 or more of these statements, you need some healthier boundaries, right? Put your number. I'd like to know, how many did you say true to? Just put the number, whatever it is, 3, 4, 1, 10. Put it in the comments if you're watching, just so we can get a sense of like where you're at. And I'm going to ask you guys also to, drop in which of those resonated, which are the ones you struggle with, so I know to focus on that in this training. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about codependency, because that is a really important thing to understand, right? So a codependent relationship, when we are codependent, it's basically we've learned sort of emotional and behavioral tendencies where we feel this like excessive dependence on the other person, but part of it is not just a dependence, but we feel responsible for the other person's feelings, reactions, even sometimes their thoughts, their behaviors, right? So signs of codependency include, again, feeling extreme responsibility for another person, for their actions, their feelings, right? A compulsive feeling or urge to care for other people. So here's how I define codependency. It's basically like loving too much, caring too much, over giving, all of those things, right? Some other signs of codependency: you have difficulty maintaining healthy boundaries. You feel the need to control other people, right? And not consciously, but sometimes this is what I find in a lot of my clients. They struggle with what I would call anticipatory anxiety. They're constantly anticipating other people's reactions. So they feel like they're walking on eggshells because they don't want to upset anyone, right? And that is a common family dynamic that I hear my clients talk about, especially when they're with their family members over the holidays, is that like they're walking on eggshells. You don't have to live like that. It doesn't have to be that challenging, right? And I'm gonna teach you a little bit about the antidote to codependency. Difficulty communicating honestly, that's a big one. Feeling like you can't be honest because if you're honest, then how's the other person going to respond? How are they going to react? Okay, so part of codependency is learning that you are not responsible for anyone else's reactions, thoughts, feelings, emotions, none of it. None of their stuff is yours. You are only responsible for yourself. But part of codependency is feeling like we need to control other people and their reactions, which is why we so closely monitor ourselves and what we say and what we do, because we don't want to upset others, right? So I see that theme play out quite a bit, especially in relationships where there's like alcoholism, addiction, right? The codependency can get pretty intense. And it, I want to say it comes from a good place of caring for the other person, maybe wanting to protect the other person, but it's not healthy and it will absolutely burn you out. It will absolutely drain you, right? And if you are a busy entrepreneur or a busy woman, like I know you guys are, it will sap all the energy out of you, right? And so what we want to work on is how to protect our emotional space. That's what we're going to talk about. So I did want to just share though that, codependence itself is actually an addiction. It's one person depending on another person because they don't depend on themselves. And interestingly, so I run a mental health book club within my Facebook group, the Women's Wellness Circle. And one of the books that we read was called Codependent No More by Melody Beattie. I highly recommend that book. But one of the things she says is basically that codependence is what happens when a child is not allowed to feel or express their genuine feelings. And therefore they grow up never learning how to express their genuine feelings, right? So it's sort of like we forfeit our needs, so to speak, because we're so focused on other people. So it's almost like a self-abandonment. We lose ourself in relationships to others because we're so focused on the other person. So just to be honest, like I found myself in my conversations with women within my therapy practice, within my wellness practice, literally repeating like the same reframing and the same kinds of statements to my clients, which is exactly why I actually developed I literally created these radical self-love affirmation cards. And I did that because I wanted women to be able to have these more healthy reframes rather than believing they are responsible for others. Like literally my affirmation cards, I'll just show you. So they're I am cards, right? I am not responsible for anyone other than myself, right? It says I am not responsible for anyone else's emotions, thoughts, responses, or actions. I am only responsible for myself. Right? I mean, how huge is that to be able to make that shift? It took me years of therapy to be able to get there, right? But there's so many elements to this that are important, right? So being able to set healthy boundaries with others to protect your energy, to protect your time, to protect your space, right? That's this one. Totally resonates with me. Yeah. So, okay. So I want to talk a little bit about how do we do this? Like, how do we make that reframe? And also I just want to mention these cards are actually going to be on sale for Black Friday weekend. It's like a BOGO deal, buy one, get one. They make excellent stocking stuffers. They're really wonderful holiday gifts for girls and women in your life. So I did drop the link. Feel free to check those out. They'll be on sale throughout the weekend. But I want to ask you also, like, who in your life do you wish that you could change? Who in your life do you worry about? Who in your life are you trying to control, trying to manage, trying to protect, right? I know for me personally, I don't know, this is maybe 10 years ago, 7, 8 years ago, as I was doing some deep inner work for myself, I had to go through a process. I found myself in these really unhealthy relationships, romantic relationships. And one partner in particular was a severe addict, but hid it from me. I didn't know. And, I really had to get super clear in my emotional boundaries because obviously I wanted to protect him. I wanted to save him. I wanted to rescue him. I wanted to do all the things. That was not my role. That was not my responsibility. And ultimately that relationship ended because the dynamic was so unhealthy, right? And sometimes we try to do that with our family members because we care, because we love them, right? Again, codependency is an over-giving and over-loving, caring too much, right? So I want to share the antidote to codependency with you. The antidote is detachment. detachment. And I'm going to talk about what that is. Detachment is basically an emotional boundary. So Melody Beattie in her book Codependent No More talks about, she says, the only person you can now or ever change is yourself. The only person that it's your business to control is yourself. And she says the formula is simple. In any given situation, detach and ask yourself, what do I need to take care of myself? What do I need to do to take care of me, right? Rather than try to take care of everyone else. So detachment basically involves present moment living, right? It involves living in the here and now. Rather than like forcing life to happen, we allow life to happen. It's a surrender, essentially, right? It's learning how to surrender, so that we're not forcing, we're not trying to control. So what she says is the rewards from detachment are great, right? We experience serenity, a deep sense of peace. We learn how to give and receive love and balance, right? And we experience freedom to find real solutions to our problems, so that we basically have the freedom to live our life without these excessive feelings of guilt about or responsibility towards other people. That's Melody Beattie. That's not me. But I love that. I just thought that was really important to share. And she says, detachment isn't like a cold turkey shutting off any, care for others or connection to others. Sometimes for safety reasons, that's important and necessary to set a physical boundary to not be in proximity to others, especially if they're creating, a lack of safety for you. But really, detachment is done from a place of love. Detachment is actually where we allow others to face the consequences of their actions, and we shift our focus. So instead of focusing on what we can't control, which is other people, we shift the focus to ourselves, to focus on what can I control, right? So what that basically means is we are choosing to not try to control every part of our relationships, but instead to just focus on controlling ourselves. So detachment really is acceptance, it's release, it's surrender, and again, it doesn't mean we don't care. It actually is just the opposite. And so what I find with my clients is there's a tendency to over apologize, to carry this guilt, this shame, right? Because we feel, because of sort of the, sort of our patriarchal conditioning that we grow up with as women, we learn that we're not supposed to take up space in this world. We learn that we should feel, guilty or ashamed for asking for what we need. So the antidote to really codependency is detachment, but the antidote to over apologizing and constantly feeling like you have to apologize for every single thing that you're doing is letting go of those totally ridiculous expectations that other people have put on you, whether that was your family members, whether that was society, or maybe things you put on yourself. And I love Brene Brown's distinction between guilt and shame, right? Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad, right? So it's more of like taking it on, when we're feeling ashamed of something, we're almost like wearing it like a cloak, as if it's who we are, it's our personality, it's our disposition, it's us, as opposed to, no, it's just maybe we, made a mistake or had a behavior that wasn't great, but we don't need to apologize for that. So actually the way out of that over apologizing is through vulnerability, it's through connecting, it's through empathy, right? All things that are critical and hugely important parts of emotional intelligence, which is what I teach, right? And so we want to actually learn how to replace the I'm sorries with gratitude, right? You can de-escalate your family drama through gratitude. And I don't mean that you need to like go tell every single person what you're grateful for, but I'll give you some examples, right? Like sometimes I'm sorry is not what we're trying to say. So instead of, I'm sorry I'm so needy, well, how about just thank you for being there for me right now? Or I'm sorry that I'm crying. Thank you for listening. Thank you for holding a safe space for me. Or instead of I'm sorry I'm late, thank you for waiting for me, right? It's like these simple just shifts and reframes in our thinking, so that we're not over apologizing. We're shifting out of guilt and shame through gratitude, basically, right? It's actually a beautiful, subtle shift. And so as we talk about setting boundaries, right, there's so many different types of boundaries out there, but what I want to focus on is this idea of emotional boundaries today. And emotional boundaries are all about respecting and honoring your own feelings, protecting your own emotional space and energy, right? By letting other people know that you are feeling uncomfortable, that you can choose in that moment how vulnerable you want to be with others, right? But an example of an emotional boundary is, I'm feeling uncomfortable with the way that you're speaking to me right now, or I'm not comfortable talking about that, or I prefer that we keep this private. I prefer not to talk about that, right? Those are emotional boundaries that you're setting. So I want to share with you a tool that I teach my clients, and I think this is a game-changing tool. And this actually comes from a relational psychologist. His name is Terry Real, and he, in his book Fierce Intimacy, talks about this idea of a bubble boundary. And I know it sounds kind of silly, but like, bear with me for a second, because honestly, it's huge. So the idea of creating like your own sort of imaginary bubble boundary is that there are two parts to it. There's an inner, like, containing boundary that contains your energy, contains what you are putting out. So if you're an overgiver, if you're like that fixer, saver, rescuer type, and you are constantly putting that energy out to others, you are going to be drained, right? And you're not going to have any left for yourself. So part of developing emotional boundaries is learning how to contain our own energy. And then also, so that bubble boundary has an outer part. That's like the protective part of our boundary, right? So the protective part actually is what allows you to like release, or sort of imagine that like what other people say or do almost like pings right off of you. You know, I have clients who, and this is literally something I sort of walk my clients through, is a visualization of your bubble, right? So if you close your eyes right now, you place one hand on your heart, one hand on the belly, and take a couple of deep belly breaths. Really just like slowing down, calming down, allowing yourself to create some safety through the breath. I just want you for a moment to imagine that you have a bubble of safety around you, like a cocoon of safety. And I want you to visualize for a moment, how does it feel in that cocoon of safety, in that bubble? What color is it? What's in the bubble with you? What smells are present? What textures are present, right? What does it feel like to be in that bubble? And then I want you to visualize, like, what is that outer part of your bubble? What's protecting you? Literally, like, what's it made out of? Maybe it's made of steel. Nothing can penetrate it. Maybe it's made of brick, right? One client once shared with me, like, it's almost like they said it was like a slip and slide. So things that other people threw at them just like slid right off of their bubble boundary, right? So for yourself, just take a moment to feel, what does that bubble boundary look like, right? What is that outer boundary? What's it made of to protect you? And then that inner boundary that contains your energy, what does that feel and look like? And so the beauty is, as you start to really like get a sense and a feel and like name it and create it, and maybe even draw it or paint it, right? Paint your bubble boundary, draw it, describe it, journal about it. You can invoke that bubble boundary anytime you need to. If you know you're going into a family situation that's going to be crazy stressful and the dynamics are just, really too much for you, invoke the bubble boundary. Literally, like, sit with yourself, take some deep breaths, right? Ground yourself in your own sense of safety that you're creating for yourself before you set foot into that space where other family members or others are present, right? It's actually a really powerful practice. And one of my favorite affirmations in my card deck is the affirmation, I am safe, I am loved, I am protected, right? Maybe you repeat that to yourself within your bubble boundary. You get to decide what that looks like, what that feels like, but those are some that I often will use with my clients just to help them. If someone's trying to invade their emotional space, we use some of these tools, right? These radical self-love affirmations, this bubble boundary visualization, this idea of energetically, how can I contain my own energy so I can stop just like pouring it out to others and hold it in so that I have energy and I have exactly what I need for myself, right? So that's a shift. So if you're still with me and your eyes are closed, feel free to stay there for as long as you'd like. Feel free also to release the hands. You can open the eyes when you're ready, but really sit with that idea of that bubble boundary. It's huge. It's such a beautiful practice. So the idea with boundaries, you guys, is, we want to be able to identify and define the boundary that we need to set, right? Sometimes it's not emotional boundaries. Sometimes it's a physical boundary. Sometimes it's a sexual boundary. Sometimes it's a financial boundary, a time boundary. Like, there's so many different types, right? So we want to be clear, what is it that I'm needing? And we then want to practice unapologetically saying no. I love that, that the idea that no is a complete sentence. We don't have to apologize for it, right? We just simply can say no. No, thank you. And we assertively can communicate what we need from other people, right? So that's a big piece of this is no, I'm not comfortable with that. What I'm needing from you is this. And just being really clear and direct in stating what we need, right? So we want to keep it simple. Sometimes it is helpful to explain the why, right? I always think it helps others to understand why we're saying no to something, but please don't misinterpret that. You don't need to over explain it. Just a simple, like, for example, I need you to stop doing that because you're making me uncomfortable. That's enough. That's enough. You don't have to over explain it, right? And if this is an area that you struggle with and you want some support, please reach out. Like, this is what I love to do. This is my magic, is helping women to be able to set healthy boundaries for themselves. So here's some examples of like what healthy boundaries look like for my clients, right? They learn how to say no without guilt. They are able to ask for what they want and what they need. They learn how to take care of themselves rather than everybody else, right? They say yes, not because they feel like they need to. It's not out of obligation, but because they want to, right? It's not a people pleasing. Also, I didn't mention this, but codependency, if you struggle with codependency, generally, you also tend to be a people pleaser, right? I was for a very long time, right? But as I've learned how to institute emotional boundaries, I no longer need to people please. I work on pleasing myself and focusing on what I need, which is hugely liberating, right? So healthy boundaries look like feeling safe to express difficult emotions or have disagreements, being treated as an equal, taking responsibility for your own happiness, not relying on others for that, right? Being in tune with your own feelings, knowing and expressing who you are, what you believe, and what you like, right? Behaving according to those values and those beliefs. So there's so much here. I mean, I could spend so long talking about this, but I do want to just share two pieces. So the idea of like conscious reframing, my second part of my embodied paradise method, is one, we have to be able to have awareness of whatever the unhealthy belief is that we're struggling with, right? So if it's the belief I'm not worthy, or the belief I'm unlovable, or whatever that belief is, we have to first be able to articulate it and be aware of that belief, right? Before we can change it. The second piece, which a lot of people miss, is non-judgment. We have to approach ourselves from a place of compassion and non-judgment so that we can hold emotional space for ourselves. And that in and of itself creates safety so that we can reframe that limiting belief. We can learn how to reframe it. So if that's something you need some support with, please reach out to me. This is what I do with my clients. Also, if you're wanting some tools and some strategies, consider purchasing these radical self-love affirmation cards. They're $33 on my website. I dropped the link, aboundingcircles.com/store. And it's a BOGO sale, buy one, get one. So you can, keep one for yourself. And so it's like a give love, get love sale. And so it's really beautiful. So I just invite you to really reflect on, with whom in your life are you needing to set these healthier boundaries? What are the boundaries that you need to set, right? Why do you want to set these boundaries? And what specific actions are you going to take to improve your boundaries, right? And how might your life be different once you're able to actually invoke the bubble boundary, or you're able to actually reframe some of these limiting beliefs so that you no longer are feeling responsible for others, right? You're only feeling responsible for yourself. It's so freeing. And so I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope this was helpful. Please feel free to message me, comment, anything that's been a takeaway from today's training. And I really would love to share more with you. So I welcome you to click the link to schedule an appointment with me, and we can schedule a free 20-minute pathway call to discuss how my embodied paradise method can support you in setting healthier emotional boundaries for yourself, in learning how to create your own personal paradise, creating safety within your body, creating safety within your thoughts and your beliefs, and reframing anything that's not so healthy, and then using some of my elite embodiment practices to be able to help you connect to your highest and wisest self. That is what elite embodiment is all about. So I really appreciate your time today. And I welcome sharing more of my radical self-love practices with you. Anything that resonates, please reach